Welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona Nicole, host of the show, mindset coach, and motivational speaker. I've made it my mission to help you get unstuck, shift your mindset, and understand your worth to help you live your most purposeful life. Each week, I will bring you an idea, guest, or a positive thought that will leave you inspired and empowered to win your life. We decide the stories we tell ourselves and where we invest our energy. I'm so grateful you popped in. Now let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm really excited for you to hear today's guest. She is a personal branding and business coach expert, and her name is Darlene Hawley. She helps ambitious, heart-centered online entrepreneurs who want to create a successful personal brand and business. And typically they're afraid to share their unique life story, but know they need to stand out if they want to build an authentic and profitable online business. She helps them build a solid brand foundation so they can share their message with the world, attract dream clients, and have the impact, freedom, and flexibility they desire. Welcome to the show, Darlene. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight.
Me too. To sort of dive into this conversation, I would love to know a little bit about the journey that's brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I have had my business now since 2007, and I love being a business coach and helping entrepreneurs grow their business. But my story kind of starts as a young mom. So I was a teen mom. I had my oldest son, who's now 24, which seems crazy, when I was 18 years old. And I got a great job right out of high school in retail management. And I was able to work my way up quickly within that organization. And I went from pregnant cashier, 17, almost 18, to by the time I was 21, I had been promoted to operations manager for Best Buy.
Wow.
And it was an amazing career. Like, I love retail management. I love everything that I learned during that time in my life. It was such a fun, like, high pace, exciting industry to be in. A lot of people don't love like Black Friday and like the craziness of holidays, but I thrived off of that time. If you're working retail, it might as well be crazy busy was kind of my like process, because when you had no customers there, it was such like a long, slow day.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I always loved the craziness and like the high, fast pace that came with that. But I was a single mom. I was working 60 plus hours a week, which is exhausting in itself. But then coming home and being, a mom to a young child and trying to balance all those things, it was really interesting for a while, trying to like figure out how to do it all. I felt guilty when I wasn't at work, because retail management, they expect you to be there pretty much all the time. And like, you can't take a vacation because there was always a district walk or a new product display set up or something new was being rolled out. And then I had the opposite guilt when I was at work, that I was away from my son and missing out on like those special memories and moments. And I got to see all the cool stuff, but at the same time, like, I missed like tucking him in bed every night and like all those little pieces. So I found myself in this position where I was just wanting something different, something more, and I wasn't sure what that was. And it took me a little while. Like, I always look back at that part of my life and I'm like, I wish I would have like known what I know now, right? And like looked back and like found a quicker exit strategy.
It's always that way though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, I'm like, did I take the slow boat? I'm like, why was I on this like slow path? But I think too, like, when you have a good career, I was making good money. I was a single mom, so I had to put like finances had to be a big part of it. I had to make sure I was able to provide for us. But I just kept like feeling like, okay, you need to do something else. Like, there's got to be more out there for life. Like, I saw other people that had, 9-to-5 jobs even, and those looked super attractive, because I was like, oh, they're like off on weekends and they're home in the evenings and they can go to their kid's soccer game and like do some of those things. But that didn't feel like it was like the right transition, even for me as well. And I had a big wake up call. I lost my mom in a car accident in 2001. And my son, he was 5 at the time, was in the back seat of the car, and I almost lost him as well. And it was like this moment in time that was a complete blur. And I don't like it's when I think back to it, even now, it's been 19 years since it's happened, but it's like those moments where like, you just know that like life is so short and you don't know how much time you have in Like I remember there was this one point when I was at my mom's funeral service, and we had finished like the service piece, and we were walking to the burial site, and I was up at the front of everybody that was coming out. And I remember stopping and turning, and there was just like this sea of people behind that had like come out to like support my mom and like be there for me and my brother. And you know, she made such an impact in so many people's lives. And it was like, for some reason, like I just remember standing there going, okay, this is it, Darlene. Like you have to start doing things different. Like I wasn't doing things wrong or bad in life, but they weren't my heart's desire. They weren't really the direction I wanted to go. And I just had this like burning desire that like there has to be more in life. So that was kind of like that moment that, you know, it shook me to my core, and it changed so much because my mom was my best friend. She was like my confidant. She was my mommy. I mean, she was like my person. So it was a super hard time. And then going through like that transition where I had almost lost my son too, and knowing that I just didn't want to miss any more moments with him, kind of got me on that journey where I was like, all right, like it's time to do something different. And I started putting applications out and like trying to figure out what I wanted to do and trying to figure it out. And I was approached by a franchise that does business coaching. And at the time when they reached out to me to do the interview, I was like, I don't even know what the heck a business coach is, but sure, it sounds cool. So I did the interview more for fun. Like in my head, I was thinking, oh, it'll be great practice. I haven't interviewed in years. Like it'll be, you know, good to get back out there. And as I was on the phone with her and talking about the industry, I was like jaw dropped, like, oh my gosh, people get paid for this. I'm like, I've been coaching my whole entire life. Like that's what I do, even in retail management, like HR, training, development. Like all I was doing was helping my employees promote and move up in the company. And my friends in high school would call me if they had a problem or somebody needed advice. Like I was always that friend who they would call and be like, hey, this is what's going on. And I'd give them advice or tell them what to do. Or maybe I coached them even back then, who knows, but
100% you did.
So it was like a cool transition because I didn't even know that business coaching was a thing. And then all of a sudden it was like the stars aligned, and I was like, oh, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. Like people get paid to do this. And here I've been doing it just for a retail management salary.
And you're like, time to do something different. I'm curious about like the transition from your corporate job to being an entrepreneur. What did that look like and feel like? You know, was it something that, you know, was more of like a slow process until you had all your ducks in a row and then you kind of jumped ship? Or
yeah, I pretty much jumped ship pretty quickly into it. I left retail management and started my business. And it was life, like it was craziness, right? Like it was so night and day. I was very accustomed. All I knew was working for inside of an organization and kind of following the rules. And this is like the standard operating platform for how you run business, and you do things super strategic. And if there wasn't a plan, I was the HR operations, so I made a plan. So I knew how to create systems and how to follow systems, but I never had done it for me. So it was definitely like a life lesson where like I had to like really sit back, and I didn't do a lot of things right the first couple of years. I knew how to get clients and I knew how to work with them after I'd gone through training. Like I knew what to do when I got clients, but I was getting clients sporadically. They were completely different niches. Like every single client did something totally different. So I had no like framework for what I was doing. And it was kind of like, I was just kind of like the luck of the draw. I was getting clients, but like I said, it wasn't consistent.
right.
And I was like, well, this is cool. Like I'm loving what I'm doing, but it's still not bringing quite enough income in. And I kind of felt like I was all over the place. I'm like, one day I was coaching a storefront. The next day I was coaching like a service-based business. The next day a product-based something else. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I just felt like it wasn't clicking. And then I remember it was about 2 years into business where I was at a moment where I had left the franchise that I had gotten into business coaching with. And I just remember sitting back and I'm like, this is like my heart, my passion. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to give up on myself. I'm not ready to like walk away and, you know, go do something different or go back to retail management or even a different kind of corporate job. And I remember sitting down and I just like journaled a ton. I wrote down like everything I could think of about who my ideal clients were and what kept them up at night and what their big fears were and what worried them. And that was like the beginning of like my new business and like how I work with my clients today. Like I got really clear on the stuff that we know. Like I think every single course for new entrepreneurs, especially in the online world, that they teach you to do ideal client work, ideal client avatars, and like all these different things. But I knew it to tell other people to do it, but I had never done like I did super surface layer. Maybe that you can relate to that. I don't know.
I totally can relate to that. I've done the ideal client like probably like 15 times. Not actually, okay, maybe like 3. And you know, after you do it a couple times, you're like, yeah. Like I know. But then it's like something still doesn't feel quite aligned. So you're like, okay, let's go back and do it again. You know what I mean? And then finally you just get it and it works.
Yeah, it's like when I actually sat down and did like the deep ideal client work, and I didn't even look like only at like the demographics of the ideal client. Like she wasn't like 33 to 35, and she didn't have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence, and she read Cosmo magazine while taking bubble baths. Like I knew that stuff too, but like I got deep on like the psychographics of it, which I think a lot of people leave that piece out of it, and that's where I found like so much like information that I was able to use. And then I actually went out and spoke to people, and I was like, all right, like this person looks like you're my ideal client. I found friends who were like kind of met like exactly what I had come up with. I reached out in some networking groups and connected with some people that were like my perfect ideal client. And I actually talked to them about it, like not as trying to get them as a customer, but just like picking their brain and going deep into what they do and who they are and like what their struggles were and what their worries were and what kind of results did they want and what was the big problem, like why weren't they able to get what they needed. And that's when like it was like those pieces all came together, and I was like, oh, like what the heck was I doing the past 2 years? Like why didn't I do this so like 2 years earlier? It would have made life so much easier.
Exactly. And then it's also kind of like the, you know, you go through what you're supposed to go through in the time that you're supposed to go through it, right? So maybe if that presented itself to you 2 years ago, you wouldn't have looked at it in the same way and in the same lens. You probably wouldn't have dived or dove, dived, I don't know, dove deep. Yeah, dove as deep in. Wow, okay. Some grammar lessons for me over here. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, you probably wouldn't have dove as deep into, you know, trying to figure out who that person exactly was. You know, when you had started a couple years earlier. So it's amazing.
And it's so true, because like we're so different, like each season of our lives and what we've learned. And you're right, like you find that information when it's the right time for you, and it like clicks when it's supposed to.
Yes.
And yeah, we always wish in hindsight, like, oh, I wish I would have figured that out earlier, but I probably wouldn't be, you know, where I'm at today had I not had some of those struggles. And it's like, I think it's to my benefit as well, because I'm able to see like some of those gaps when I look at my clients' businesses when I first start working with them, and I can see some of the things that I was doing in the past and like how that had, you know, gotten me stuck as well. And I'm able to help them get through those hurdles a little bit quicker. So I might not have been able to see those obstacles and those hurdles if I hadn't experienced them myself as well.
Exactly. And, you know, if you think about brand on its own and your clients, when they're sort of going through their personal brands and that kind of thing, do you think that we all naturally have our own personal brand?
Yeah, I do. I teach a lot with my clients, like finding their brand story and figuring out like what pieces of our each individual lives are what make us us. Like there's so many entrepreneurs that do the exact same thing that I do, the exact same thing that you do, but it's our stories and our life experiences that we've gone through that make each of us different and unique. And we can stand out by sharing those stories, and the people that are supposed to connect with you and relate to what you're sharing, like those are the ones that are going to find you. And it's kind of cool because you're going to attract the people that you're meant to, kind of like a magnet. They're going to come to you, but you're also repelling some of those people away as well. The people that aren't your ideal client, they're the clients that, you're excited about them, but then when you start working with them, you're like, oh, this is not a good fit. Like they have different values than I do, or they're just not like a good fit personality wise even.
Exactly. So, you know, one thing that I've started sort of, well, I was looking the other day at the insights on my Instagram, and I think it was like, you know how it tells you how many people followed you versus how many people have unfollowed you in like the same day or whatever. So I was looking at that, and it was like there were quite a few people who had unfollowed, and I was looking at it and I was like, you know what though, I'm grateful, because it brings it closer to the people that should be there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because Like at first, I think when you look at those numbers, like when you open up your email and you're like, oh, I lost 2 subscribers, and you're like kind of sad for a second. And I stopped looking at them because I was like, it doesn't even matter. Like I'm kind of sad that they self-leave because my open rates are usually better because
yeah, exactly.
I actually want to read. So I feel better about that. I'd rather look at my open rates than like my numbers of who unsubscribed and unsubscribed.
Exactly.
But it's nice, yeah, because you can tell like, okay, these people weren't resonating with what I was saying, or maybe it just wasn't the right season for them. They might have even liked your work, or they might still follow you somewhere else, I think too.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed like some people sometimes unsubscribe from emails, but then like months later, like I'll see they'll comment like in my Facebook group, or they'll show up somewhere and like, oh, they're following me on Instagram. It's not that like, it's just we're busy and we like our inboxes are such a sacred place. Like, it's hard to like know who we want to actually allow in there, and depending on what season of life they're in and when, if they actually need help in something, or if maybe right now they're good. Like I think they kind of self-select in that mannerism as well. So.
Oh, I totally agree with that. That makes so much sense. And, you know, if you think of like, I don't know if you relate to this, but I think of myself and like, I end up like finding all of these like different resources and subscribing to all these different lists. And then it pops in my inbox. I'm like, who are you? Like, I don't even know what I subscribe to and to who. I'm like, who is this? And then the content is usually great, but I'm like, oh, wow. Like, okay, let's go check out your social media. Like, I have no idea how I even found you, you know?
Yeah. And that happens, I think, more often than most of us even like to admit to. We're like, oh, this looks like a cool opt-in, or, oh, this is something I'm interested in. And then like you said, all of a sudden you're like, who is this person? And then you're like, oh, I kind of remember subscribing. And then you have other people, you're like, pretty sure I didn't subscribe to you.
Where'd it come from?
There was somebody who just added me to their newsletter list like 2 weeks ago, and she's local to me, but I have no idea who she is. And she even says, if you don't want to be in my inbox, or if you don't want me in here, you can delete. But I'm like, well, why did you add me to start with? Like, if she would have like said, hey, I just found you on wherever, whatever platform she saw my name at, I want to connect. This is what I do. I see this is what you do. I think, maybe we can referral business together. And then, hey, do you want to get on my list? I'm like, that would have been like a beautiful introduction to like somebody you want to connect with. I'm like, don't put me on your list. I'm like, it's like a turn off. You're like, yeah, I'm cool.
You're like, actually, yeah, you're right. Thanks. Oh my gosh. Okay. Diving back into a little bit about like your personal brand. So if we all kind of naturally have one, essentially you help to pull out everyone's personal brand and help them share their stories and, really get what it is they want to get across. How could we discover what our personal brand is if we're not exactly sure of where to start, or if it doesn't naturally come easy to us in beginning to identify that?
Yeah, one of the first things I have my clients do is just like do a massive brain dump. So, and I'm like, get a piece of paper, a pen, a journal, and do it old fashioned style, because I feel like it's just, you get more out for whatever reason, I feel like, versus like when you're typing it. But I just have them brain dump everything they can think of, like every story that happened in their life, whether it was something from when they were a child, in high school, as a young adult, college days, like just all those different stories that kind of make you who you are. And then you take that ideal client work that we talked about earlier, and kind of match that up. So, okay, like these are the pieces of my story that I've experienced, and how does it connect to my ideal client? And I have them kind of like draw connectors to where, like part of my story, I've already shared some of this, so it'll be easy to kind of reference it. Like I was a single mom and I worked 60 plus hours a week. I was exhausted, I was tired, and those relate really well to my ideal client. A lot of my clients are women, they're moms, they have busy lives. A lot of them have worked corporate jobs, and they've been there. Like as soon as they hear that story, they're like, oh, like I've been there. Like they can feel those emotions. Not everybody can relate as much to like me losing my mom, which I'm so thankful that so many people don't relate to that one.
Yeah.
But they have other things in their lives where they've had loss, or they've had hurt or struggles, and they can kind of parallel match them. So I just have my clients like brain dump everything out, and then look at their ideal clients. What are some of the stories that can really well connect to their audience, so that when they're sharing their journey and they're sharing pieces about themselves, you want to connect and find relatable information that you can kind of pull in and your audience can relate to.
I love that. I love that. That resonates a lot, because I think a lot of the time, even if you're, like you're saying, your audience online, like I think if you are even just drafting content, for example, and trying to come up with different things. It's like so many people get stuck on like, what am I supposed to talk about? What am I supposed to talk about all the time? And it's like, well, what do your people want to hear? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that your ideal client, which our ideal clients typically end up being a version of us from the past, right? And, you know, so it's like, what does past you want to hear? What would that person need in that moment? So that's really important to remember.
Yeah, and I have my clients create what I call a story bank, which is, for me, it's a Trello board. I use Trello. You can keep like a journal or a notepad or even an Excel document or a Google Doc, but just keep an idea. Like anytime you have like things that happen in life, like we all have, you know, crazy stories, whether it's at the grocery store or on a walk with, I get a lot of ideas when I'm walking with my 5-year-old for some reason. Like he just says like quirky, funny things, and it like gives me content ideas. And so I write those down in my story bank, and sometimes I can use it right away. Like I can relate it to something with my clients, but it gives you like a story piece that you can use that's relatable to your audience. And then you can tie it into whatever that content is that your ideal client needs to hear at that time. So
I love that tip.
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially in the online industry, to make sure you're sharing stories, connecting in that way, connecting like little pieces of yourself, so that like it can be like, hey, I was on a walk the other day with my son and he said, I don't even know what he said, like I can't think of one right now, but like he said this random totally crazy thing, and it made me think about how a lot of my clients do XYZ, and this is so like you take the story and then all of a sudden it like transitions into your ideal client and like their pains and their struggles and how you can help them. Or this is, you know, here's 3 tips to how to go for a walk with your 5-year-old and get great content.
I love that. I've never heard anyone say that before. I think that's really, really important to note. I'm definitely going to use that tip. Story bank is such a good idea, because it's like, how are you ever going to remember all the things that happen if you don't write them down, right?
Yeah. And I don't remember anything. I have like, my brain forgets everything. Like I'll forget that I said this 5 minutes from now. Like I'll forget. Like I'm human, whatever. Like
yes.
And even when I think, oh, I'll totally remember this one forever, and then you're like, well, what was it that I was thinking 5 minutes ago? I don't remember. So just having that Trello board where I can like make a quick note, like went for a walk with my son and he said this, and like I just like I leave it usually super simple too. Like I don't have to go, like it's enough of a memory that I can go back to it. And then another thing to keep in mind too, that I think as we're sharing stories, is you don't want to share from like in the moment when everything's like super high emotions, or if things are kind of going crazy, like if you're having like a health scare, or if you're fighting with a spouse, or I don't know, like any of those like moments where like your emotions are kind of high and your emotions are raw. Brene Brown has a beautiful quote that is, share from the scar, not from the wound. And I love that, because it gives you the ability to know, like kind of to check yourself, like, am I in a place where I can actually share the story? Or am I past that now? And I can kind of look back in hindsight and I can teach people like my life lessons that I learned through it. Like with my mom, like with losing my mom, I couldn't talk about that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like a long time. And I still I can do it now. Like I've got it for the most part, but sometimes that story changes and I share more details, and sometimes I share a little bit less depending on how I'm feeling in that moment. But like you have to have that boundary set up for yourself so you can know like, maybe I shouldn't share this story. Like if you're going to cry when you tell it, or like get emotional, or if like you're grumpy about it and have like a negative position about it, like maybe it's not time yet to share it. And I think like that's a perfect way to use the story bank too, is write those stories down. And then, 2 months from now, or 2 weeks from now, or maybe 2 years from now, you might be in a position where you're like, you know what, I think I can actually tell that story now. And I think it would really relate and connect to my clients about this topic that I want to bring up. And it's such a nice way to like have, like, it's authentic. They're real stories. They're yours. They're not anybody else's. Nobody else is going to tell that story, which is like, goes back to that beautiful thing about like your brand is so unique because it's you. Nobody else can tell it. And that's what makes you stand out. Like so many people try to emulate what other people are doing, or the stories that they see other people sharing. They're like, oh, well, she told this story, so maybe if I tell it to my audience, like they'll resonate. And then it falls flat. And they're like, well, why did it work for her? She got 500 comments and I got 0. And then like we go down that spiral where, we beat ourselves up and we're like, nobody likes me. Nobody wants to work with me. What does she have that I don't have? And it just takes some of that guesswork out of it, because they're your stories. It's your real life, your experiences.
That's so true. And it's so powerful. And it's really important to remember that, especially because the online space is can be a very interesting place. I mean, I think it really has to do with what kind of content you surround yourself with will determine the experience that you have when you're online. But as the person, posting different things, it's very easy to compare yourself to different people, and give yourself all the reasons why you're not good enough, right? But it's coming back to that place and remembering that it is your story. And one thing that I tell my clients is like, nobody can do what you do in the way that you do it. You're the only one who can do it in that way. I want to quickly pause this interview and tell you about the Handel Group coaches that I've had the honor and privilege of bringing onto the Happiness Happens podcast. With every conversation and interview, I've learned something so impactful and so life-changing. Inner You Life is the online coaching course from Handel Group that gives you the tools to get yourself unstuck, wildly happy, and thriving where it matters most to you. Your relationship to yourself, career, love, body, money, time, and more. From wherever, whenever. Recommended by Hugh Jackman, Dr. Mark Hyman, Forrest Whitaker, Elena Brower, and hundreds more. Taught in MIT, Stanford School of Business, and 50 plus institutes of learning across the world. Visit inneryou.coach and use the code HappinessHappens at checkout for $75 off. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah. Really? Yeah, and it's so true because it's your life and your experiences. So, and especially like I feel like our corporate backgrounds, our retail management for me, like those different backgrounds bring a unique thing too, because you were trained in a certain way. You've had different management leaders, executives that have kind of, taken you under their wing and like helped nurture you to create you into who you are today. And like those things are benefits, I feel like, coming into the entrepreneurial space. Like a lot of people try to like close that door to their past life and their careers, and they're like, oh, that's separate. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'm definitely who I am today. And I can think back and I'm like, oh, I'm totally pulling this from, I learned this, even as a cashier or when I worked at McDonald's. My first job was at McDonald's. I'm sure I learned a lot of great stuff from that.
Of course. You learned a lot, I think, from working there. My sister worked at McDonald's, and you just learn so much stuff from there. But no, it's so true. Everything you're saying is such a good point, especially the part about like closing the door, because, it's so easy to be like, nope, that's not me. It's not what I wanted. That's a past me, whatever. But it really is all of you, because I think of even things now that I can help people through when we're working together. It helps guide them in the situation that they might find themselves in that I may have been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you need that experience to be able to.
Yeah. And just because it was corporate or a different industry doesn't mean it doesn't equate, and it's not something that can be valuable and helpful at this time.
That's so true. I love that. Do you think that so let's say you're in the online space and you're working, even if you have like just a regular business that's not necessarily like an online coaching business, do you think that your personal brand impacts your business brand? Do you think that there are similarities between them, or are they more often than not a little bit separate?
Well, like for most of us, a lot of the clients that I work with are small business owners. So they're solopreneurs. So their business is their brand, and their brand is their business to a degree. I think it changes like as you have a bigger organization and you have a lot more people on your team, and there's more people that are impacting with customers and having those conversations. It can change. I think it's a lot like you have to pay closer attention, because at that point your brand is bigger and it's more than just you are. But as like service-based entrepreneurs or even smaller product-based businesses, a lot of times like your business brand is you. Like you're the face of your brand, and it's how you show up and how you share stories with your audience and how you're connecting and nurturing and building relationships from there. So yeah, I think they go hand in hand for the most part. I think when you get like maybe over like 10 employees, it gets a little bit different.
Yeah.
But most of my clients are on the smaller scale of that. So they're usually the face. So we're just trying to make sure that they're showing up as authentic as possible. They're making those connections. They're growing their audience because they actually truly care about them, and they're not a number or another order because the company's so big and you can't keep up. It's just easier to build those personal relationships because, you're keeping your business manageable to where, you can maybe take on 15 one-to-one clients, or maybe you have 100 product-based or like program-based clients or something, but where you can handle it, but you're still the face of the brand and you're the one that's, still doing a lot of the work. Like you're the one still having to at least have your voice as part of the brand. You might have a team of copywriters that are helping you, share that message, but at the end of the day, like it still has to be your voice and your message that's coming forward, because that's what's going to draw people in and have them connect.
I love that. That's so, so, so good. And you said something in there also about, authenticity. And, do you have a couple tips that you could share with our audience for, for them to be able to show up more authentically online and in their own personal brand and in their business?
Yeah, I think just being real, like showing some of your quirks and like your silliness and like your fun personality, I think is important. Like so many people, I remember when I first started getting on video, I still get like, I'm not like crazy, like energetic. Like I'm pretty mellow, I consider myself, but like some people like are mellower and then they get like all like busy and excited, and like then you meet them, like you see them on video and then you see them in real life, or you have a conversation, you're like, you're not really the same as you are.
Yeah.
So I like to like try to keep it as real as possible. So if you are loud and fun and silly and like super excited and like do all that stuff, like do that on video, do that when you're showing up online. You want it to be like that nice transition. So when you make it and you're becoming a speaker and you're doing keynotes at presentations, and the people that have been following you from the beginning, like when they meet you, they're like, oh my gosh, you like, I feel like I know you, first of all, because you've built this like nice nurtured relationship. And then when they see you on stage, you're like, you're the exact same person that you are, on a phone conversation one-to-one like we are, or if you're in a big group. So I think that's one of the easiest ways is like, just show up however you are. And it doesn't matter. There's introverts that do amazing in the online world space, and there's extroverts that do amazing in the online space. So it doesn't really matter. You're still gonna be sharing your stories. You're gonna share your experiences, and that's what's gonna connect the people still. So just show up as your authentic self and be like I always joke, like you want to be real, like REAL. Not, you don't want to show like the highlight reel, like the movies.
I love that.
Like, so like show up and be real, like just be who you are. Like if your friends were to watch you on a work video that you created, would they be like, are you the same person? Like, and I always tell my clients too, I'm like, take these first videos. A lot of my clients hadn't done a lot of videos before they work with me. So I'm like, I want you to take this video like that you're recording, and I want you to go show it to like your best friend, and have your best friend tell you if like who the heck was that guy on the video? Like that's not how you act. That's not how you talk. Like you looked like you were like stiff and nervous and like not showing personality. And then it's like those people that are close to you that can kind of call you out, and it's like a safe zone, right? Because it's your best friend. They love you, and they're giving you the feedback because they love you. But it's fun to like see, like they're like, oh, like I didn't realize I was even doing that, because they were so nervous or scared or whatever. So I think it's a fun experiment too, to like be like, hey, watch this live video that I did. Does that actually look like me? And if not, like how do you perceive me? Like what kinds of things do you like? What do you love about me? And then try to like pull some of that into your marketing and into your messaging, into your videos and different things like that, so that you can show up and you're like, oh, like you are real. Like this is the real you. It's not like the fake real from, that you crafted or created.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. I've had a really hard time in the past. I wouldn't say that I have a hard time showing my authentic personality when I'm online, and when I'm doing things on videos and that kind of thing. I feel like I almost have to like tone it down a bit, because I have like a lot of energy and like a lot of like, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's like, are people like ready for that? So I tone it back, but then I'm like, I wish that I felt like I didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? So I guess it's like, if I start doing that, then it'll just become a thing, right?
Just be you. Like, do you need permission to show up and like just be you? Like,
are you giving it to me?
I'm giving permission. Like, yeah, show up and be you. like you're like, you have like a fun energy, like go with
Thank
it
you.
and let people see it, because that's what they love. Like they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I get so excited when I see you talk. Like you feed off of people's energy, right? Like,
It's
yeah,
so
go
true.
with it.
It's so true. To touch a little bit on brand in general, what are some things that are like at the foundation of a really strong brand?
Yeah. So one of the things that I kind of talked about some of them. Ideal
Yeah.
client is like one of the biggest foundations. I always say, like, if you're building a house, like the concrete foundation is going to be your ideal client work, getting super clear on what your niche is and who you actually want to talk to. Ideal client, niche kind of go hand in hand, but I like to kind of break them apart too, because it's important to get clear on like what type of person you actually want to work with before you get into like the psychographics of it. And then get clear on your messaging. What type, like after you've done the ideal client work, like pull out the words that your ideal client used and use those words in your messaging so that you can articulate what it is that they do, so that your goal kind of with your messaging is you want people to lean in. You want them to be like, oh, this is super interesting. Like, tell me more about what you do. And there's a couple of things that can happen. They could be interested for themselves, or they could be thinking about somebody else they know. And they're like, I have a referral for you. Like, you need to talk to my friend Susie because she was just telling me today all about this. And I think you would be a great fit to help her. So your messaging, your ideal client, your niche are kind of the main piece of the foundation. And then I also like to dive into like what you're offering as your business. If you're service based, what's your offer? Finding an offer that feels really good to you, that you can grow and share it out to the world and feel confident and comfortable delivering it to them. And then making sure it's got some form of a foundation to it or a framework so that people understand how you work and what you do with them.
I love that. That's really, really good. So it's like kind of like 4 key pillars to building a business. Because it's funny because it's like, you know, I have a corporate background as well. And like you learn all of these different things, but it's like when you're starting a business, it's funny because it's like most of the time, especially when you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you start this business and it's just you. And you're like, okay, what are some of the things that I need? Like, what are the little pieces? And you're like, oh yeah, I guess I need a little bit of this. And like, I guess I need a little bit of niche and I need a little bit of ideal client and all those things. And it's kind of like you were saying before, you know, I wish like I knew 2 years ago what I know now. It's like, you know, it's almost like it's good. And this is what's great about what you do. You help people figure out, you know, their different pillars and how to put them all together. And you know, how to make it work for their business and like have a business that's really aligned to them. That's really important.
Yeah. And once you have that solid foundation, it makes everything else so much easier because you know what you're offering, you know who you're offering it to, you know what their pain points are and how you can serve them to solve those problems. And then you can go out and actually start marketing.
Exactly.
And like showing up. And so many people start marketing and they're like, I'm doing all these things that I'm marketing in all these different ways, but you're not really marketing to anybody because you weren't super clear on who your ideal client was. You didn't know what your niche was. You didn't have a solid message or an offer.
I've done that for so long. Yeah, it was, when was it? It was like last year, and I shifted my niche so many different times, and it's confusing for your audience because it's like, wait, like I thought you were talking about this thing, and now we're talking about this thing, and now we're talking about this. Oh, but we're going back to here, and it's like it's very confusing for people too. So the more clear you can get on all of that before you start is like really ideal.
Yeah, and you're right. It does confuse the audience sometimes, and it's okay to pivot. Like sometimes we do need to pivot because you just find that the messaging that you were putting out there and like it wasn't serving you, it didn't light you up, so you weren't showing up in a way to offer it where you were actually growing your business. So it's good to pivot, but you don't want to like go from I don't know, marketing as like a dentist to like an eye doctor because that's super confusing, right? But a lot of times, like maybe you're a life coach and you're working with, you know, women entrepreneurs or women who have careers. Like you can slowly pivot if you need to, because maybe you find I don't enjoy actually working with entrepreneurs. I actually like working with corporate women who are wanting to leave their business or leave their corporate field, but I want to work with them that stage before they've left. Like it's okay to pivot a little bit, and your audience, like you just take them on the journey with them. Sometimes you can pivot it slowly And other times you can just completely go for it and change things up. And like your website might be like 5 months behind. Sometimes that's because you'll know, like if it's time to pivot and you need to do something different, like just go with your gut and decide like, okay, this is how I'm going to refocus my business. And that's when you go back to the foundation again, and you get clear on your niche again, you get clear on your ideal client work, and do that messaging and offer. And then you can go out there and market it. And then you're like, start getting clients, and you're like, oh, like, yes, like this is definitely the way I'm supposed to be going. Like I'm getting clients. I'm passionate about it. I love what I'm doing. And you're just showing up being your authentic true self in that moment. And that's when clients are going to come, because sometimes we do pick niches that maybe we feel like it's the right place for us, but our heart's not into it. Or we do what other people, we see somebody else being successful doing it, so we try to emulate what they're doing, but it's not where our heart's at. And because of that, so we're not showing up. So yeah, sometimes you have to pivot, and it's just a part of that process. But I think you'll, like, in your gut, when you're doing work that you love and that it's like it's clicking with other people and they're leaning in and they're interested in what you're saying, like that's when you know, like, oh, I've made it. Like this is definitely where I'm supposed to be. And then you can market the heck out of it and grow your business and take it to the next level.
Exactly. It's really interesting, that you're saying that. And like, I do, sorry, I like lost my thought for a second, but now I have it back. I'm a mindset coach. And when I first I've pivoted quite a bit. And a few months ago, I was working, with entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I felt like, because, all the coaching that I've done has always been business type coaching. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I should just be, a business mindset coach. And then I can help, entrepreneurs. And then I was doing it and I'm like, this doesn't feel aligned to me though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really want to be focusing too much on specifically entrepreneurs. While I, absolutely love working with entrepreneurs, it's so familiar, but it's also exactly what you're saying. Like, is your heart like in that place to be doing that? So it's just really interesting. And it's like, I guess the thing also that was most challenging I found for myself was that I kind of loved all of it. You know what I mean? Like I loved helping everybody, but you can't help everybody in the whole world. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, you could, but then you'd probably be very tired, but
yeah. I can't handle the whole world. There's no way.
No.
Like I do one-to-one clients I just love that personal one-to-one connection.
Yeah, me
so
too.
I can take 15 clients on at any given time. And that's like max cap. Like that's like overload. 12 is probably more realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I don't know where I was going with that. Like you can only take on so much though, right? Like you can't help 100 people. So when you're marketing to like the masses and you keep your niche like super broad and you're trying to attract a lot of people in, you can't even handle that many people anyways. But then when you niche down specific enough to where people understand who to send to you, or if they're your ideal client, they know to come to you, then you can get like your 10 to 15 that you want to work with so much easier, and it's so much more focused. So, but we keep it. So many people I was afraid those first 2 years, totally afraid to niche down. I was like, but I'm a business coach. I can help every single business owner in the whole entire world.
Yeah.
And then I was getting like, 2 and 3 clients here and there. And I'm like, oh, like when you narrow that focus in, like everybody was like, oh, she's a coach for everybody. That's cool. But I didn't feel like I wasn't talking to them, to their pain point, to their heart, to what they were struggling with. So yeah, once you niche down enough, you're like, oh, I can get my 15 and I can have a profitable business and I can do work that I love and I can show up and create content for this specific audience.
I love that.
And you can pay all your bills and you can, travel some and you can work from home and tuck your kids in bed at night or like whatever that thing is for you, you get to do those things.
Exactly. That's a really good point. And it's oftentimes a lot, it's very much something that people are scared to do. You know what I mean? To niche down. It's like, oh, I don't want to go too far down, because I don't want to like limit the possibilities, but you actually open up a whole new world of people who were just waiting for you to show up.
Yeah. Like a lot of my messaging is marketed to moms, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
I work with about 40% men.
That's awesome.
But I don't market to them. Like they find me and like something in my messaging works for them too. So I think it's super interesting because we think we're putting like this cap on us and that we're only going to get like this small group of people. But I have people like, hey, I like this, a couple clients back, one of my clients came to me and he was like, I know that you work, you know, with women. Would you be able to work with me? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'm like I work with everybody. I'm like, I talk a lot to moms and like, that's my niche where, you know, I like to work, but I do take on, you know, male clients too. If they resonate with my messaging and they align with my values and who I am, then absolutely. Like I'm going to open my, like, I'm not like shut out to it, where I know some people are like, I only work with women. And like, that's like their niche. But I'm like, for me, like if my message resonates and we have, like, I can see a connection there. Like, I'm like, absolutely. Like I'm not going to close the door to that just because you happen to be male.
Exactly. I actually relate a lot to that because I have a couple clients that are male. And it's really interesting because like, I think of my brand, it's like pink splashed everywhere. You know what I mean? So it'd be like the last thing that you would think from the outside, but no. And like, they're amazing to work with. It's just very interesting. It's really cool to be able to support men, because I think that, you know, the more of like the heart-centered approach is what a lot of them might be needing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, exactly. They feel loved on and connected, and they're able to show up as their true self too a lot of times, because it's hard. Like men are judged in a lot of ways too. Because, you know, they're put in a bucket, like you're this type of person, and that's not true. Like none of us should be labeled or have that judgment placed upon us.
Exactly. I know that we're almost nearing the end of this. I can't believe it. Like I like glanced really quickly at the time and I was like, oh my God. So so I just have two more quick questions for you before we go.
Yeah.
The first one is, you know, what's the importance of building, you know, a community, and not just for sales that convert, not just for, you know, getting the deal, but what's the importance, the true meaning behind, you know, having your community?
That's a great question. I think a lot of that is just showing up and being a great human being and nurturing and loving on people in general. I have a Facebook community. I have like my Facebook page, and then like Instagram and different places that I do show up a lot. But the place that I enjoy spending the most time is in my group, because I'm able to actually build relationships and we're able to have conversations, and people are willing to raise their hand and ask questions when maybe they wouldn't do that on Instagram or on a business page, because other people can see it. The settings are a little bit different. And then even on like your newsletter list, I think with your newsletter list, there's a great opportunity for nurturing and building relationships and community by just engaging with them and asking open-ended questions, and not being like, don't just share content to share content, but find out what kind of content your people actually need, where they're struggling at. I do a lot of polls in my Facebook group or even to my email list. I'm like, hey, I'm working on like my content calendar for what I want to do in the next couple months. What things are, you know, what type of content do you need to move forward? Is there anything that you're stuck on? And sometimes I get crickets, which is awesome. I'll find content to do.
Of course.
And other times I get comments back and they're like, oh, I need more information about this, or I'd love more information about how to nurture a community. And then that's what I do, is I create content that will serve that need and help show up with them. And it's like twofold. They're getting the information they need. They trust me, they like me, they know me, or at least I hope they do. They're on my list.
You're so lovable. How could they not?
Right. But then you're just able to like nurture them and build a relationship. Like I get people that I'll send a newsletter out, and I'll ask a question at the bottom of it, and I'll get, you know, 5, 6, 7 people sometimes that will respond back. Not everybody does, which is totally fine. We're all busy. But I love when I get like a message back and like they're like, oh, thank you so much. Like this was so helpful. Or they'll be like, hey, I noticed that you said this, but I had this happen recently. Like how would you handle this, or what would you do differently? And it just opens that conversation. And those are the people that eventually book a clarity call with me, and they want to find out more about my services and how I work. And then all of a sudden they're a client, and I'm like, this is beautiful. Like you don't have to be like that salesman who's like, if you sleazy slimy and like, you know, buy this and buy that and pushing information on them. Like people are paying attention. They're watching what you're saying. If you're the right person for them, then they're gonna come to you when they're ready. And it might not be when you think they're ready. It could be 2 years down the road, all of a sudden somebody sends you a message and you're like, you've been following me for 2 years. I didn't even think you were paying attention. But they're watching and they're listening. And now they're like, oh, like now I'm ready. And you're like, ready for what? And they're like, to be coached.
You're like, I'm here. I'm ready. What do you mean?
I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I'm so ready. No, I'm kidding.
Right?
Oh man.
But it's interesting because a lot of times we think people aren't listening.
Yeah.
Like, people, like I do that. Like I follow people that don't even know I exist probably because I don't like their posts. I don't comment. I don't engage. Like I'll just, I'll be mindlessly scrolling and I'm taking in content. And there's certain people I love to like see what they're saying about saying about things, if I can say that. And I've bought from them at times, and I'm sure they were like you come out of like left field. You're like, who are you? So I love when that happens to me. Exactly. And I'm like, see, people, like it always makes me realize, like, keep showing up, keep creating content, even if you don't think anybody is listening or watching, because people are. Like, they are watching. They're just sitting back and they're on the sidelines and they're not ready to engage yet. But when they're ready, like you're going to be who they come to because you've already built up that trust.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest part, especially just going back to the question that, that we're talking about now, the part about community. It's like, it's not connecting with people to convert them right away into buying into your it's really caring about what they do, who they are, and how they live. Right. And making sure that they feel supported in every single way. I talk to people all the time, sometimes like for days at a time, if they're going through something and, happily, you know what I mean? And it's like, but that's what makes me happy. And I guess everybody's a little different in that way too, right? Because everyone has like their own boundaries, but it's nice to help people in general.
Yeah. And it's like a silent way of selling to a degree. Like you don't have to like flash it around and like shove it down their throat or anything like that. It's just building a relationship and connecting. And then when they are ready, like you've hopefully answered all of their objectives by that point because they've been following you and they just know that they're ready. They're going to hit the buy now button or they're going to schedule that call with you. Exactly. It doesn't have to be like where it's like high pressure, high sales, and where it feels just like super gross. Because I feel like so many people I talk to have had those experiences. And like, it's like you accept a friend request, right, from somebody on Facebook or LinkedIn. And as soon as you do it, like within 30 seconds, you get like this generic spam message about buying. And I'm like,
who are you?
Like, why would you do that? Like, I don't know who's teaching this method as a sales process, but they have it completely wrong. I'm like, no, I'm like, as soon as I send or get them, I usually try to respond back before they do. And I'm just like super nice, like, hi, thanks so much for connecting. It's so great to see you. Like, tell me something about yourself or, like just ask a couple of like actual questions. And then like, eventually, you might get asked like, hey, what do you do? And maybe you don't. Like, maybe you're like, you can start showing up in their timeline and like commenting and build a relationship like a normal person. But like these people that just spam you with like their sales, I'm like, I don't understand like why they do that. I'm like, to me, it's like defriend. Like, nope, I'm done.
No. Same as like the unsubscribe.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, nope, you're not selling to me today. Nice try.
Exactly.
I'm like, does this work? Like they do it so much too. I'm like, I can't imagine that it works. And somebody's like, oh, I just was dreaming about you. And like, you're like, popped up and here you are. The universe sent me to you.
Thank you so much. It's actually funny you say that. I had someone reach out to me on Instagram. It was a very random, like it was a person, but set up as like, I couldn't tell if it was like a company or like a their own coaching business. I couldn't really tell. And the person was like, hey, like, what are you doing in your business? And I was like, oh, like, so I kind of told them like a little bit and they were like, oh, okay, great. So, okay, we're going to get you on a call. We're going to create a plan for you. And then you're going to like do it. And I was like, oh, I was like, sorry, what are we doing? So confused. And then they were like, yeah, so like, we're going to start working together essentially. And I was like, oh, is there a cost to me? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, I was the weirdest situation I've ever been. I was like, thank you so much. But like, no, thank you. Like, it's very
people strange. Are ballsy, right? Like,
yes, they are.
I don't imagine doing it. There's no way that I could show up and do that. I'm like, nope. No. It's like, it spins off all my value.
I'd be like, here, it's free. No, I'm just kidding. Take the whole thing.
Right?
No, kidding.
You can have it all.
Take it all. Exactly. Where can our listeners find you? Because I know they're going to learn more.
Yeah, my website is a great place, just darlenehawley.com. And then I have a Facebook group that I do free coaching in called Attract and Stand Out Brand Builders with Darlene Hawley. I'd love for you to come and subscribe, or not subscribe. You're not even subscribing. You're just joining the group and interact and build relationships. I just started a podcast, which is super exciting, but I do all of my interviews are live in the Facebook group, so people can ask questions while we're on the interview. And it's just a great community to get people involved in and get connected and just to build relationships in a true, authentic way instead of that sleazy, slimy way that we were just talking about.
Exactly.
And then if you want pictures of cute kids, I do hang out on Instagram too at Darlene Hawley.
How could you not? It's so cute. This is my last question for you before we go. And it's a question that I ask all my guests when they come on the show. And it's, how can our listeners start to create a little bit more happiness in their lives every day, starting today?
Yeah, I think just showing up and being real and authentic and be yourself and just show the world how fabulous you already are. Stop hiding behind what you think people want to see from you and just show up as yourself. I think just being you is like the biggest joyful thing that you can give to anybody. Is just be you. Have fun with it. Smile, giggle, snort if you snort, like whatever, like show your authentic self when you're online. I think it's such a beautiful thing to see in this world. And I think it makes you so much happier too. Like when you just can show up and you're not like guessing at what you want people to see you as, or you're not having to pretend to be somebody that you're not. Like you can just be real. It's like hanging out with a best friend instead of like your worst enemy.
I love that so much. That's such a good tip. I really feel like I've just been having a tea with a friend over here. I've just been drinking this. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just been so nice.
It's perfect.
It has.
We should do this more often.
I would absolutely love that. And I would love to have you back. I have more questions for you that we just don't have the time for today. No, that would be so awesome. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.
Oh my gosh, I know. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode. Definitely save this one, go back, listen to it again. There are so many nuggets of wisdom in here that you can take and implement into your life and implement into your business right now, starting today. Wishing you a wonderful week. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope these words have brought you inspiration, insight, and a bit more happiness. Please leave a comment or a review if this episode resonates with you. I would be so grateful. Until next time, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.